Ferrari is admitting its mistakes with Hamilton, Red Bull is being exposed for more toxic behavior, and Aston has started testing its 2026 car. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari. It's the headline that shook the Formula One world. But according to Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur, both Hamilton and the team may have seriously underestimated just how tough this challenge will be. Today, we're diving deep into why this dream partnership could be one of the most difficult and potentially one of the most rewarding chapters of Hamilton's career. When Lewis Hamilton confirmed he was leaving Mercedes for Ferrari in 2025, it wasn't just a career move. It was a shockwave through the sport. Fans imagined the iconic red suit, the prancing horse on his chest, and the possibility of bringing a championship back to Maranello after over 15 years. But behind the scenes, Vasseur, the man responsible for making this partnership work, is sounding a note of caution, and it's worth listening to. Fred Vasseur knows the road ahead won't be smooth. In a recent interview, he admitted something unexpected. Hamilton and Ferrari might have underestimated the challenge of joining forces. And that's a big statement when you're talking about a 7-time world champion and one of the most legendary teams in motorsport history. Why? Because this isn't just about a driver switching teams. It's about stepping into a completely different culture, a different car philosophy, and a different pressure cooker. At Mercedes, Hamilton has spent over a decade in a hyper-efficient, methodically German environment. Everything is precision engineered, calculated, and familiar. Ferrari? It's more emotive, more intense, more political, and more scrutinized than any other team in F1. Vasseur pointed out that adapting to this kind of environment takes time, and it's something even the greatest drivers can't shortcut. We've seen it before. Sebastian Vettel's move to Ferrari in 2015 came with massive expectations, but the weight of history and internal politics made that journey far from easy. Let's talk about the car itself. Ferrari's current machine is fast, but inconsistent. One weekend, they're challenging Red Bull. The next, they're struggling to manage tire degradation. Hamilton will have to adapt to a completely new driving style to get the most out of it. Vasseur hinted that while Hamilton's talent is undeniable, there's a learning curve ahead, one that neither side can ignore. So why did Hamilton take this risk? It's partly about legacy. Winning a title with Ferrari is the kind of achievement that cements your place in the history books forever. Think Michael Schumacher, think Niki Lauda. Hamilton knows that if he can pull this off, it will be one of the defining stories in all of sport. But legacy comes with pressure. And in Ferrari's case, that pressure is relentless. Every move, every race, every word spoken to the media will be magnified. Here's where the psychology kicks in. Humans tend to underestimate how long it takes to adapt to a new environment. It's called the planning fallacy. You think you'll settle in quickly, that your skills will instantly transfer, but reality almost always takes longer. Vasseur is essentially warning Hamilton and Ferrari not to fall into that trap. It's not just Hamilton who needs to adapt, Ferrari does too. Vasseur stressed that the team must integrate Hamilton in the right way, building trust and understanding before the results can follow. That means making sure the engineers, strategists, and even the culture at Maranello are ready to mesh with the way Hamilton works. Here's the twist. By the time Hamilton steps into the Ferrari cockpit in 2025, Formula One will be on the verge of huge regulation changes coming in 2026. That means the team won't just be focused on winning right away. They'll also be developing an entirely new car for the future. Balancing short-term performance with long-term planning? That's a high-wire act. History tells us that even the greatest champions can stumble when they change teams. Fernando Alonso at McLaren, Vettel at Ferrari. Even Schumacher's first season with the Scuderia wasn't dominant. The pattern is clear. Success takes time, patience, and an ability to weather the storms of transition. But here's the exciting part. If anyone can do it, it's Lewis Hamilton. His resilience, his mental toughness, and his relentless pursuit of excellence are exactly what Ferrari needs. Vasseur himself believes that once the adaptation phase is over, the potential is sky high. Still, Ferrari fans are famously impatient. They've been waiting since 2007 for a driver's championship. The arrival of Hamilton will set expectations through the roof, and managing those expectations might be one of Vasseur's toughest jobs. So, what should we realistically expect in Hamilton's first season? Podiums? Almost certainly. Race wins? Possible. A championship? That depends on how quickly Hamilton and Ferrari can sync, and how strong Red Bull remains. For Hamilton, this is going to require something rare: embracing vulnerability. Accepting that there will be mistakes, setbacks, and moments of frustration. For Ferrari, it means trusting a driver who has been shaped by a completely different racing philosophy and giving him the tools and freedom to make it work. Fred Vasseur's warning isn't doom and gloom, it's realism. He's reminding everyone that championships aren't won on paper, and that even legends have to earn their stripes all over again when they switch teams. One thing's for sure: the Hamilton-Ferrari story is going to be one of the most fascinating sagas in F1 history. Will it end with heartbreak, or with the kind of triumph that cements a legacy forever? Only time will tell, and we'll be here to cover every twist and turn along the way. Have you ever wondered what it really takes to survive in the cutthroat world of Formula One? One mistake, one bad race, one whisper in the paddock, and your entire career could be hanging by a thread. Today, we're diving into a story that's got the F1 community talking. A story involving Red Bull, one of the most successful teams in modern history, their longtime boss Christian Horner, and a driver who isn't afraid to speak his mind, Dan Ticktum. But here's the twist: Ticktum doesn't believe for a second that the latest rumors about Horner's future are true, and the way he explains it might just make you question everything you've been hearing. Let's set the scene. Christian Horner, the man who's been leading Red Bull Racing since they entered Formula One back in 2005. Under his leadership, the team has gone from underdogs to absolute dominators, winning multiple Constructors' One-Vander championships and helping drivers like Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen become world champions. But in recent weeks, there have been reports, some of them pretty sensational, suggesting that Horner could be on the chopping block. The reason? Allegations and internal tensions that, according to some media outlets, could lead to his removal as team principal. Now, in the world of F1, rumors are like wildfire. They spread fast, they get hotter with every retelling, and sometimes they're not even based on reality. This is where Dan Ticktum steps in. If you know Ticktum, you know he's never been shy about speaking his mind. The former Red Bull Junior driver has had his fair share of controversies, but he's also been brutally honest when it comes to the politics of motorsport. And when he heard the latest talk about Horner, his reaction was simple: I don't believe it. Why? Well, according to Ticktum, the idea that Red Bull would sack Christian Horner over what's been reported just doesn't add up. He believes the rumors have been blown out of proportion and that the people pushing them are either misinformed or have their own agendas. In his view, Horner's track record speaks for itself. Under Horner's leadership, Red Bull has achieved a level of dominance in the modern hybrid era that only Mercedes can rival. Getting rid of him would be, in Ticktum's words, a massive own goal. But let's pause here and think about this from a psychological perspective. Why do stories like this gain so much traction in the first place? It's because as humans, we're drawn to conflict. Our brains are wired to pay attention to drama, to power struggles, to the possibility of big changes in familiar systems. When we hear that the head of a hugely successful F1 team might be on the way out, it activates our curiosity and our desire to know the inside scoop. And the media knows this, which is why stories like this often get more coverage than, say, the quiet success of a technical upgrade or a flawless pit stop strategy. Ticktum, however, isn't buying it. And here's where his personal experience comes into play. He knows what it's like to be part of the Red Bull system. He knows the culture, the expectations, and the internal politics. And while he admits that Horner is a polarizing figure, someone who's made enemies as well as allies, he believes that Red Bull's leadership is far too pragmatic to throw away a winning formula without an extremely good reason. And from what he's seen, that reason just isn't there. Of course, Ticktum's stance also taps into something else: the idea of loyalty in F1. Despite all the competition and backroom deals, teams do sometimes stick by their leaders when the results are undeniable. And if there's one thing Horner has provided in abundance, it's results. Multiple world titles, a car that's currently the class of the field, a team that's functioning like a well-oiled machine. Throwing all that away because of a few headlines? Ticktum says it's not just unlikely, it's almost unthinkable. But here's where it gets interesting. While Ticktum's comments are direct, they also reveal the deep divide between public perception and insider reality. For the fans reading these rumors online, the possibility of Horner's downfall might seem thrilling or even inevitable. But for someone who's been inside that world, the idea feels like fantasy. And that gap between perception and reality is one of the most fascinating parts of modern sports coverage. The stories we think we know are often very different from what's actually happening behind closed doors. Now, whether you agree with Ticktum or not, there's no denying that his comments have added another layer to this ongoing saga. They challenge us to think critically about the information we consume. To ask ourselves, who benefits from this story being told? What's the source? And could it be that sometimes the most sensational headlines are the ones that deserve the most skepticism? And that's not just true in F1. It's true in life. We're constantly bombarded with stories designed to grab our attention, trigger our emotions, and keep us hooked. The trick, and this is something Ticktum is reminding us of, is to pause and question before we believe. So where does this leave us? Well, as of now, Christian Horner is still very much in charge at Red Bull Racing. The team continues to perform at the highest level, and the rumors, while persistent, remain just that, rumors. Ticktum's words might not make the headlines as loudly as the initial reports did, but they serve as a reminder that in the high-pressure, high-stakes world of Formula One, not everything is as it seems. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. In a sport where split-second decisions can make or break a race, where engineering brilliance and human skill combine to create something extraordinary, it's easy to forget that the biggest battles aren't always fought on the track. Sometimes they're fought in the media, in the court of public opinion, and in the minds of the fans. So the next time you see a headline about a major shakeup in F1, remember Dan Ticktum's words. Consider the source. Look at the bigger picture, and never underestimate the power of a story to shape the way we see the world. Because in the end, Formula One isn't just about speed, it's about strategy, on the track and off it. Imagine this. You're Zak Brown, the CEO of McLaren. You fought tooth and nail to bring your team back to the front. And then out of nowhere, you admit that your weakest rival is actually really, really good. Wait, what? Today, we're diving deep into Zak Brown's surprising comments, the psychology behind them, and what they mean for the 2025 Formula One season. Because in F1, nothing is ever as simple as it sounds. Let's rewind for a second. McLaren has been on a resurgence. Lando Norris, consistent, fast, hungry for his first win. Oscar Piastri, the rookie sensation who showed zero fear going wheel to wheel with the very best. And the MCL38, a car that went from midfield mediocrity to podium contender in record time. You'd think McLaren's focus would be on beating the likes of Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes. But when Zak Brown was asked about their weakest rival, his answer took everyone by surprise. He pointed the finger at Aston Martin. Yes, Aston Martin. The same Aston Martin that shocked the world in 2023 with Fernando Alonso's podium streak, but then slipped backwards as the season wore on. The same team many thought had lost their edge. And yet Zak Brown says, they're really good. Here's where it gets interesting. In sports psychology, there's a tactic called positive projection. When you publicly praise a rival, especially one the public has started to underestimate, you plant a seed in everyone's mind. Watch out for them. It's a double move. First, it takes pressure off your own team. Now people think McLaren's being realistic. Second, it subtly forces your rival to carry the weight of expectation. Zak Brown didn't just say Aston Martin was good. He went on to explain that their technical upgrades, their driver lineup, and their relentless investment make them a serious threat, even if the points table doesn't show it yet. And he's not wrong. Fernando Alonso may be in his 40s, but he's driving like a man half his age, aggressive, precise, and mentally bulletproof. Lance Stroll, not always consistent, but on his day, he can deliver big points, and in a tight midfield, that's gold. But why call them the weakest rival? Here's the psychological hook. It's a relative term. McLaren's weakest rival doesn't mean they're weak. It means, of the big names McLaren fights with, Aston Martin is statistically the lowest threat. By framing it this way, Zach makes McLaren look both humble and focused. They're acknowledging the challenge, but also quietly signaling, we've got the upper hand here, for now. Think about the F1 battlefield right now. Red Bull is in a league of their own. Ferrari has flashes of brilliance but keeps tripping over strategy calls. Mercedes is still trying to find a magic formula post-Hamilton dominance. And in that mix, McLaren has emerged as a consistent podium contender. Aston Martin, they're the wild card, and wild cards can be dangerous. From a fan's perspective, Zach's comments do two things. One, they stir curiosity. We start asking, is Aston Martin cooking up something we don't know about? Two, they set up an underdog versus underdog rivalry, something that's always electric to watch. In fact, this little psychological nudge might just fuel Aston Martin's fire. In competitive sports, players and teams often latch onto any perceived slight, or in this case, any backhanded compliment, as motivation. And here's the kicker. We've seen this before. In 2023, Christian Horner downplayed Mercedes' pace early in the season, only for Mercedes to show up with upgrades that spooked Red Bull enough to push their own development harder. In 2018, Ferrari claimed Red Bull was not a real title contender. Guess who snatched wins in the second half of the season? Yep, Red Bull. Sometimes these public statements are less about truth and more about mind games. So was Zach Brown playing mind games? Possibly. But there's another layer here, sponsorship and branding. McLaren's image is built on being a fighter, the plucky challenger, the team that claws its way back to glory. By singling out Aston Martin as a dangerous underdog, Zach reinforces McLaren's own story. They respect the fight, they thrive in it, and they're ready for anyone. Here's where you, the fan, should keep your eyes. Testing data, the lap times, the upgrade packages, the long-run pace. That's where we'll see if Aston Martin is a sleeping giant. If they close the gap early in the season, Zach Brown's comments will look like foresight. If they struggle, it'll look like he was being diplomatic while quietly focusing on bigger fish. The next few races will tell us a lot. Will McLaren keep their upward curve? Will Aston Martin pull off another early season shock? Or will both teams find themselves in an all-year duel for best of the rest? One thing's for sure, in Formula One, rivalries aren't just fought on the track. They're fought in press conferences, in interviews, and in the subtle art of psychological warfare. So the next time you hear a team boss call a rival really good, ask yourself, is it respect or is it a chess move? Because in F1, every word counts. Imagine being behind the wheel of a Formula One car that feels nothing like the ones you've ever driven, where every input triggers a new sensation. That's exactly what Aston Martin's newest development driver, Jack Crawford, just revealed. And it's about their highly anticipated 2026 F1 contender, crafted by none other than Adrian Newey. First, the stage. Formula One is undergoing its most dramatic overhaul in years. 50% electrification, active aerodynamics, sustainable fuels, brand new power units. It's a blank canvas for teams willing to think differently. And Aston Martin? They've thrown everything at it. A new Honda partnership, a state-of-the-art wind tunnel, and the greatest designer in F1 history, Adrian Newey. They've secured a full works engine deal with Honda starting 2026, ensuring custom integration between chassis and power unit. No more customer compromises. Plus, their new wind tunnel, in collaboration with ARM AI, crunches data in real time from thousands of sensors, giving Aston an aerodynamic edge under tight FEA restrictions. And Adrian Newey, the genius behind multiple championship-winning cars, Aston's managing technical partner and minority owner, here to design the AMR 26. Now, think of Jack Crawford, a young Formula 2 driver, working behind the scenes. He's not just testing improvements to the current AMR 25. Crawford's been experimenting with the 2026 spec car in the simulator and says it feels a bit different from today's ground effect machines. He's helping break in both chassis and the brand new Honda power unit, something he says has been fascinating. It's his first time aiding in power unit development, and he may never have gone through this level of rule change as a driver. It's new territory. That sense of being part of something entirely new taps into our human curiosity. It's why you're watching right now. Newey is already deep into the fundamentals of the AMR26, the suspension geometry, fuel tank size, wheelbase. Why these parts? Because once set, they're locked for the season. Everything else, front and rear wings, bodywork, it's flexible for in-season updates. And get this, Newey thinks the 2026 rules allow more innovation than he originally feared, echoing his positive outlook back during the 2022 reset. When someone of Newey's caliber says there's more room for creativity, you know there's serious potential there. But it's not all smooth sailing. Newey has admitted that Aston's simulation tools, especially the driver and loop simulator, are weak. He says it could take up to 2 years to overhaul them fully. Think of it like having a Ferrari engine but driving in a blurred mirror. It takes precision to win, and the tool to achieve that precision still needs work. Combine Newey's expertise, Honda's backing, ARM's data-powered wind tunnel, all underpinned by Crawford's fresh insights, and you've got a recipe for disruption. Remember, Newey has turned rule changes into championships before. Damon Hill even hinted that Newey might have already spotted a loophole in the 2026 regulations that others haven't. That single sentence, "he's found something," primes us with anticipation. We want to know what that something is. There's also a human story here. Lance Stroll, facing teammates like Alonso, has been sympathized with, even dubbed the poor guy wrestling with racing legends every weekend. Newey's arrival, plus a rising culture of confidence, is just what Aston Martin needs. He's not there to build morale, he's there to instill a winning mentality. So, does Aston Martin become a title contender in 2026? Racing contracts or even grid shakeups won't matter if the car can't perform. Newey has said attracting big names like Verstappen without a fast car is a pipe dream. Performance is the only ticket. But with Crawford's cockpit insights, that cutting-edge wind tunnel, and Newey's record with regulation shifts, it's not just a dream. It might just be the blueprint. Here's where we land. A fresh technical landscape, an F1 legend at the drawing board, next-gen hybrid power, a rising star driver offering real-time feel. Aston Martin is on a trajectory to go from underdog to disruptor. What will happen next? Will Newey unlock a game-changing loophole? Can Crawford's feedback push the AMR26 over the edge? And most important, is Aston Martin about to become the team to beat? Drop your predictions in the comments, and don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because in F1, the next rule change can rewrite the entire map.